The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Howard, and I am one of the business analysts for the BGAS system. I want to welcome you to the SPO, CSAT, CSAP, SPO WebBGAS review. I will be conducting this webinar today along with Charlene Carr and Crystal Pender. They are also BAs on the system. Just want to let everyone know you are muted. So throughout the webinar, we will be taking breaks to answer any questions you may have. So you will notice in your toolbar, your GoToWebinar toolbar, there is a question box at the bottom of the screen. If you go ahead and enter any questions you may have during the breaks, we'll respond to those questions. Now, just to clarify, we are here to answer questions about how to enter the data into the BGAS system. Any program questions you may have, please contact your team lead for any questions on that. All right. Also want to let you know that we are going to be using what we call our UAT system. It's our test site. So as we go through it, any data you may see is fake. It's not the real thing. All right. So to begin with, this is your login screen. And before we log in, I just want to point out. Yes.
Mary, we're not able to see your screen.
Once again? Okay, hold on. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. To begin with, before we log in, there's a couple items I wanted to point out on the screen, the login screen. If you forget your password, we have links here, or if your username, you can click on these links and it'll take you to a second tab where you can enter the information. The other one I pointed out was need a new user account. You'll see here a document, and if you need to, you can pull this up at any time, that walks you through the process of requesting an account. Now, the reason I wanted to point this out was if a state user contacts our help desk requesting an account, we are going to refer them to you. All state users and jurisdiction users must get okay from their SPO to set up an account. And then you will email the help desk and inform them that it's okay to go ahead and set up that user account. But this is a step-by-step process. So if you ever need it, it's right here for your use. The other thing I wanted to point out is if you come down, if we come under the funding request banner, you will notice we have here the SPO list and the state contact list, and this is for anyone's use. So if you click on the SPO list, it's going to bring up a document that has the SPOs for each of the applications and their contact information. So that is there for your state users use, or if you have any questions on who's responsible for what states, this information is right here for your use. And the same goes for the, you'll see here, state contact list. That's also here that you can just click on it, it'll open it up and you can find out the state contacts for each of the states and jurisdictions. All right. Let's go ahead and log in. When it first opens, you'll have the window shade will appear, and this just gives basic information For instance, it'll tell state users when an application is open and when it will be closing and information like that. So that's what the window shade information is for. You just simply click on it and your dashboard will appear. Now, I just put a dashboard together for use today. So, but this, I just want to, what's going to happen is I'm just going to give you a basic way of how to navigate the dashboard. So we're going to start at the top, and you'll note over here on the right-hand side is a menu tree. User management is where you can go in, and if you need to, you can update your information. You'll also see if you wish to change your password, and if you have a preference for the colors of your screens, you have that right here also. Support. You can create a support ticket if you have any questions you need to, you want to send directly to the help desk via BGAS, you can do that. Some simple facts about the BGAS system, and then training. On this screen, you will note are all of the WebBGAS training navigation manuals. Here at the top, and this is for the state users, when we do our webinars for the state users, they are posted on YouTube. And so they can come right here, and if they click on this, this will take them to the SAMHSA YouTube screen. Your webinars are being recorded, and they're going to be posted on what's called an unlisted site. So once the webinar is posted, a link is sent to us, and that you can contact your team lead or Don Trell, your core, and ask them for the link to your YouTube sites for your trainings if you ever want to review these webinars. But you'll also note here we have the navigation manuals, and you'll see here SAMHSA navigation manual. So if you wish, these manuals go through step by step what we're going to be covering today. So if you open it and save it to your desktop, you can always use it as a reference. And those are located under support. If we click on state profile, you'll see we have in the left-hand menu tree, we have the state agency, SAMHSA, and third party. And I'm just going to select a state here. So the state, we ask the states when they first go in to open an application, that they come to this screen first and update all of their information. And then you'll see under the state agency is a SAMHSA contacts. Now, it's my understanding for the CSAT and CSAP projects that there is one person that goes in and assigns all the people to their states, but this is where that happens. So this needs to be updated. This drives that SPO list I showed you from the login screen. This is where that information goes, but this also drives other places where the SPO participates in the system. So they need to make sure this is updated. All right. The next item on the menu tree at the top are reports, and these are standard reports. They're here for anyone's use, and they cover all of the applications. Now, the one I wanted to go over with you was the SAMHSA operational reports. These are here for SAMHSA only. The states and jurisdictions do not have this appear on their standard report screen. This is here for your use. And you will see here the state contact mailing list, number of open revisions, which we'll go over in a little bit, and then the different tracking reports for the applications. You'll see here is one that's called user roles and access. I'm just going to click on this one and use this one to show you. For each state report, for each standard report, there is what we call a parameter screen, and they're basically set up the same way. You'll have here state jurisdiction selection. If you wish, you can select a specific state or you can select all states. But it's also, we have them broken down by region, so you can select a region. Or you can go in and use an SPO's name. You can select an SPO. And this state jurisdiction selection you'll find on all of the parameter pages. And then for specific items, like say for this report, you can also select whether you want it to be for mental health, for substance abuse prevention, SINAR, and then the different roles. You'll see here, you got CSAP team lead, CSAP project officer. So you just simply click on what you want to run it, who you want to run it for. The output is on all of the parameter pages. You can do it by web, PDF, Excel, and Word. So this is a basic setup for your parameter pages. And those standard reports, like I said, are there for your use. We'll go over printing in a second, but just to let you know, when you go to print something, it'll come into the print queue, and this is what's here. And sometimes, depending on how big the print request is, it may take a while. So you can always come back to the print queue and check and see if it's ready for download. It'll let you know. Going back to the dashboard. Okay, here at the top, you'll see you can print the dashboard if you need to, but we also have this button called the legend. If you open the legend, it gives you a step-by-step explanation of what all of the details, what all the items on the dashboard are and what they do and how you can use them. So that is there for your use. And you simply click on the X in the upper right-hand corner to close it. If we move over to the right-hand side, you'll see here where it says available block grants. And it will always open to the most recent block grant that's open. But if you do the drop down here, you can see where we have all of the block grants. So if you ever have to go back and look for one, they're all right here. So if you simply click on the one you want and click on go, it will take you to that block grant. Take a moment to go back here. All right. Below the legend button, you'll see here it says summary count. And this is just a quick view. It tells you for the plan and the report and the ASR, how many have been created. Once a state opens a report, then these numbers will increase. But this is just a quick look at what's going on with your states and jurisdictions. As we come down, you'll notice now we have for substance abuse, the states and jurisdictions are broken up into regions. You'll see here, if I highlight Maine, it becomes a link. So if I click on Maine, if I click on the name, it will open up Maine and it'll show you all of the applications from the past that have been opened. So if you can always get to another application this way also. The other thing I want to point out is if I come over to the right-hand side, you'll see here there's a print button. If you ever need to print the entire application, you can do so from here. Instead of, you can go into the application itself and print each table individually, or you can come here and click on the print button. Now it'll print out the entire application for you. You'll also notice so when the state goes in and opens the application, these buttons will become active. You'll see here, for instance, it says SINAR not created. That's because the state has not gone in and opened the SINAR application yet. So once they open the application, the buttons will become active. You'll see here there's just plan, but if I come down to Maryland, you'll see plan has an asterisk next to it. That's because Maryland does a combined plan, does both their mental health and their substance abuse together, where Maine has just the substance abuse plan, and then they'll open their mental health plan separately. For reports, there are no combined reports. Each state has its own separate report. But I just wanted to point out that's what that asterisk means, that it is a combined mental health and substance abuse application. As we come over, you'll see here it says number of open revisions, and you'll notice numbers. If you click, I'm going to come down. I was going to see. If you click on the number, it will open a second tab, and it will give you the status of what that revision is. It says this one is open for revision, which means the state has gone in and has opened it, but yet has not yet started working on it or hasn't completed it. But this is, once again, just a quick way to review the revision request. Charlene is going to be covering the revision request, the documentation log, and the checklist. So she'll go into further detail of what all of this means. But I just want to let you know. So this is, once again, just a quick view of what's happening with each of your states. You'll also see, as we move on to the right, you'll see here we have the Prevention and Treatment Block Grant applications, CSAT and CSAP. And then below that, SPO team lead, SPO team lead. This has to do with the checklist. Once you open the checklist and start working on it, once you've signed off on it, there'll be a check mark that will appear, as it did for the report. This is the plan section, and this is the report section. And you'll see here someone has already gone in, the SPO has already gone in and signed off on the checklist, and the team lead has already gone in and signed off on the checklist for the report. Now, if you need detail about what's happening here, if you come over here at the final column and click on the detail, here you can go in and it'll give you details of who has been doing what, who signed off on it, and then the date and timestamp will appear. So that just gives you a little more detail. All right, Crystal, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. We have one question. Where is the document located that is titled Requesting an Account in BGAS?
Okay. I will show, it's on the login screen. Hold on just a moment. Let's do this real quick. Need a new user account. If you click, this is the one I was talking about earlier. If you click there, that's what will open up that document for you. It's on the login screen, right under forget password or forgot password and forgot username. Any other questions? Okay, a couple more things I want to point out before I turn it over to Charlene is You will note here along the left-hand side on the menu tree, you can get an existing application. The time frames are set here, the state profile, which is also up here, and the documentation log. Now, like I said, Charlene is going to go into detail, but just want to point out that you can get to the documentation log from the window shade, or you can get to it from the application, and that's where we're going to go now. But that's what this means. If you do it from the documentation log, you have to go in and set up your parameters. If you do it from the state screen, then you don't have to set the parameters up. It'll automatically open. But that's just, I just wanted to point that out. All right, now I'm going to go to the 2021 SABG plan for a second. And the reason I want to do that is, as you know, we have what we call a regular year and a mini app year. And so when you open a plan in the odd, I call it the odd year, the 2021, I want you to note that the overview screen, this is the overview screen. This is where the users come to access all of the tables. You will see here it's broken out, that we have the 2020 above the horizontal line and then 2021 below. All right, and once again, this is just for the mini app year. And so when you go in, you'll note that we have the like I said, 2020 above and 2021 below. It's broken out. So when you go in to use these screens, if you're in a mini app year, then you want to make sure that you go into the correct year when you want to do your review, if you want to look at a table. I did want to point that out. And you'll also notice, once again, we have the left-hand menu tree, and I said, here's the documentation log. SAMHSA review, that's where you'll go to do your, this is where the checklist is. Revision request, and then each of these sections is broken out. So you can come here if you need to, and if you just say want to print the state information page, make sure you do it for the correct year. If you want it for 20 or 21, and you can come over here and simply click on print. Now, if you are in a regular year, you won't have the horizontal line dividing. It'll just be the total report application within itself. And this, once again, remember, please remember, this only affects the application. It does not affect the report. Go back to 2022 for a second. So if I come here for 2022 and click on overview, you'll note it's just the report, it's the application itself, just for 2022. And then in 23, we'll have the division again. And then this is the report. You'll note that navigating them is the same. So here is the checklist. So if I come over here to click on overview, it takes me to the overview screen. And then you can see the individual tables. Now, the SINAR is set up differently. So I want to give you a quick view of that. If I come into the SINAR, here is your checklist. But you'll see here there's only one link that opens it. And here is where the state users can get the downloads. They can get the forms and manuals that they need. And then this is the area where they upload their information. So the SINAR is different. The SINAR for the state users, the SINAR application is set up differently. All right, any other questions, Crystal?
No, no other questions.
Okay. Charlene, are you ready?
I sure am. Right.
I can see your screen.
All right, so I'm going to show you what happens after the state submits the application to SAMHSA. So when the state submits the application to SAMHSA as POs, you should receive an automated email from the BGAS system stating that the application is now ready for your review. So as soon as you get that email, you may log into the BGAS system and you may access the application and the state that you'd like to review. And since the application is submitted, you will notice that this is going to be the default screen when you open the application. The default screen will highlight SAMHSA Review tab, and it will show that there are two checklists, one for CSAP and one for CSAT. In this case, the prevention POs will be filling up the CSAP checklist, and the treatment POs can access this checklist and fill in the CSAT checklist. I'm using the state of Maine as an example, and this is the 2022-2023 SABG application, which is the plan. And since we've only developed the first year of the plans on the BGAS system, so these checklists are basically for the fiscal year 2022. I'm going to show you how these checklists look. This is the prevention checklist, but each checklist on the BGAS system pretty much has the same format. So as you can see, there are these tabs on top of the checklist. These tabs relate to the different sections of the application. Each of the section will contain questions from within that section. So if you're under the state information section, you'll see that there are questions related to the state information section of the application. For example, you'll notice that under state information section, there is assurances and signatures title, which means that under state information section, there is a form for assurances and signatures, which is the CEO funding agreement form, and these questions relate to this form. You'd also see that there's a link to that form for your easy access. If you click on the link will open up in a separate tab in your browser, and now you have easy access to review the information on that form and fill up your checklist. Now, the format of the checklist is such that you have questions and yes or no radio buttons. So you can respond to each of these questions by clicking on your response as a yes or a no. And in some cases, there's also an option for not applicable. Also notice that there are certain questions within the checklist that have this check mark against them. You'll see that the definition is provided at the end of each page on the checklist, which means that a yes or not applicable response is required for the checklist to be approved. And I will show you in a bit how the checklist will be approved. So as we navigate through the different sections of the application, you'll notice there are questions and links to those tables to which those questions relate to. There's also a comments for approval box where you can enter your comments as you go through the different tabs of the checklist. And you have to keep saving your responses for each of these sections or tabs. This is the planning tables section. And then these are questions related to planning tables, tables 1, 2, 4. And you will also see that some questions have these numbers appearing, which is, again, we are pulling these numbers from the tables for your easy access of information for your review. Now, also, you will see that there are some questions which are related to the yes and no answers on the previous question. For example, if you look at question 4.2, which is about table 5A, a prevention table, and the question is, did the state complete table 5A? Now, the answer can be, if the answer is marked as a yes, then the state or the PO is required to also answer the questions, the rest of the questions on that table. And as you can see, there's a check mark on question 4.5. So this has to be either a yes or a not applicable for the checklist to be approved. But in case the state did not complete table 5A and the answer is a no, all of these questions related to the table are now inactive, which means you cannot answer these questions because the state did not complete table 5A. And so if there is a check mark on a question that is inactive because of a previous condition, you do not need to answer a yes or not applicable because you cannot really answer this question. So it is okay to leave this unanswered with a check mark if it is dependent on a previous condition and it makes the question inactive. And some questions also require you to enter the checkbox responses. I'm going to save all of these responses. And this is the last section. And again, you have questions on different narratives, and the links to the narratives are also provided for your easy review. Now, I have already responded to the checkmarked questions as a yes, except for one. And you can see that the PO approved is still not active. This is because all the questions that have a check mark are not answered a yes or are not applicable. So I'm going to go ahead and answer yes to this question. And you can see as soon as you have all the checkmarked questions answered a yes or not applicable, the PO approve button becomes available for you. Other things on the checklist are the save, cancel, print. Of course, we saw if you are saving your responses to the page or to that section, you click on save button. Cancel will take you out of this page back to the SAMHSA review screen, and print will print the checklist. Open application link will open the entire application overview on a separate tab. And if you're ready to review the checklist, you will put in your initials and click on PO approve. This is a confirmation message. And you'll see that once you have approved the checklist, you will be directed back to the SAMHSA review page. And here it will show you the user that you're logged in as. Logged in as the help desk, which is why it says signed by the BGAS Help Desk. And it will also show you the timestamp and the date at which the checklist was approved. Now, as soon as this action is taken, what happens is that the BGAS system will send an automated email to the TL of this application, informing them that the application is now ready for TL review. At this point, the TL will log into the application, click on the checklist link, and now they can review the checklist, and they have the option to either reject it or approve it. If the TL does not think that everything is accurate on the checklist, or there is something that needs to be changed by the PO, they can go ahead and reject the checklist. They will click on this button, confirm that they'd like to reject the checklist. Have to enter the initials and then reject, confirm. And at this point, you'll notice that since the TL rejected the checklist, the PO approval is also gone, which means now the PO has to log into the system back again, and they will receive an automated email from BGAS system stating that they need to reapprove the checklist because the TL rejected it. And now it's back to the same point where the PO has to make changes and then approve the checklist again. Now, once the PO has made changes and approved the checklist again, the TL can go into the checklist and review the checklist. And this time, if they approve the checklist, then there's going to be a box that says, that asks for the confirmation, asks for your initials, and this time you can go ahead and approve the checklist as a TL. And you'll notice that once the TL approval is made, the person who signed off on the checklist and the date and the timestamp appears on the screen. So this is the general format of all the checklists. And I'm going to show you how the checklist for the treatment looks. This is the CSAT checklist for the 2022 plan. And you'll see that the format is pretty much the same. There is this box for approval, any comments that you'd like to put in. And then there is, for each section, there are tabs, and within each tab are the questions related to that section. Yes and no buttons, and some questions have a check mark. And then all the questions are linked to a table, and the link to that table is also provided for easy access. This is how the treatment checklist looks. And again, for easy access, there are some numbers pulled out from the application and displayed here. So you have easy way to look at the numbers and respond to these answers. All right, so same thing happens for this checklist as well. If I have all the questions with the check mark, answered a yes or a no, yes or not applicable, then the PO approve button will become available. And the same process follows as we saw in the prevention checklist. The PO can approve it, and once they click on PO approve and initial it, and some comments are required here, so I'm going to add something to it. And now I'm going to approve it. All right, so the same process followed as we saw in the prevention. The person who signed off, the name of that person will appear here, and the date and the timestamp. And the next would be the TL approval. The TL can go into the checklist, review the checklist, add any comments here if they wanted to, and initial the checklist and approve it. And you can see that all the approvals are now listed on the screen. Now, this was a standalone SABG plan for Maine. Let me show you what happens when it's a combined plan. So in a combined plan, as Mary stated, that there's going to be an asterisk on this button if it's a combined plan, which means it's SABG, MHBG combined plan. You'll notice that apart from the treatment and the prevention checklists, there is an additional checklist for CMHS, which is for the mental health POs and TLs. So they are also going to be accessing the checklist from this page. But again, this is for the mental health folks. So you don't need to worry about the link that appears on the combined plan for the mental health POs and TLs. Another thing that I'd like to show you is what happens when it's a 2-year plan. So I'm going to be showing the 2020-2021 plan for an example. I'm going to be opening up the 2021 SABG application. And let's open up the plan for Connecticut. You'll notice for the 2-year plans, there is a drop-down list on the side of the screen. So if you want to access the checklist for the first year, you can choose 2020, click on this button called Go, and you'll see that these are the checklists for 2020. But if you'd like to access the checklists for the second year, which is the 2021, you click on Go, choose the option for 2021 and click on Go, and then the checklists for the second year would appear. So that's what happens in the 2-year plans on this page. Now let's look at the checklists on the report side of the world. I'm going to go back to 2022 application. And on the report side, as you can see, this is the default screen for the report or the plan or for any application after the application is submitted. It's the exact same thing. You have links for treatment checklist and prevention checklist. And also for the reports, you have a link for the threshold conditions approval checklist. So for the treatment POs and TLs, you click on this link for CSAT. And you'll notice that, again, the format of the checklist is exactly the same as we saw before. But there's a slight difference. We do not have the approval buttons on the checklists themselves. So for the report, the approval happens in the threshold conditions checklist. But the questions or the answers from this checklist populate the answers of the threshold conditions checklist. So all these required questions have to be answered, a yes or not applicable, and all these answers have to be saved on this page. But again, you cannot approve the checklist on the screen. Everything remains the same. You have questions for each of these tables, and you have links to these tables. You have what we call as data hooks, which is we're pulling information from the table for easy access and display. And you have the questions in the format of yes, no radio buttons, and check marks means that you have to answer yes or not applicable. All right, so once the answers are saved on the treatment checklist, we'll go ahead and move on to the prevention checklist. Same is the case with the prevention checklist. The format of the checklist is the same as we saw before. You have all these tabs and you save your answers on the checklist, but the approvals will not happen on the checklist. All right, so before I show you the threshold conditions checklist, I'd like to go to the SINAR application for the state of Maine to make sure that the threshold conditions checklist for SINAR is completed. So this is where the SINAR application resides in the application. There is a checklist for the SPO review checklist for SINAR, which has 3 levels of approval: approve, early alert, initial completeness review, and the final review approval. You'll notice again, there are tabs, and then there are comments, and then yes and no questions, and there are some questions where you have to enter the information and show the page number where the information is in the application. Everything else is pretty much the same like we had for the other checklists. And once the final review approval is done, which in this case is already done in this checklist, you will notice that the signing off information will appear on the screen under the SAMHSA review tab. So once the final approval is done on the SINAR SPO review checklist, the threshold conditions checklist for SINAR can be approved. So all these questions have to be answered a yes for the approval button to appear. If any of these questions is a no, you'll notice that the checklist cannot be approved, and all the yes answers would mean that the approval can take place. And this is where the SINAR PO will put in their initials and check the terms and conditions and approve the threshold conditions checklist. Now you'll see that the signing off appears on the screen with the date. And now going back to the threshold conditions checklist, all right, clicking on the link for the threshold conditions checklist. So when you first open the threshold conditions checklist, and by that I mean the first time the page loads, the answers are pre-populated into the checklist from the CSAT and the CSAP and SINAR. So you'll notice that once the page loads for the first time, it's going to show all these answers that it has pre-populated from these checklists. And if you make changes to those checklists after the page has once been opened, the changes will not reflect on the checklist. So for example, these answers come from the CSAP checklist, all the yes answers to these questions. And if you now go into the CSAP checklist and change the answers to any of these questions, it will not reflect back into the threshold conditions checklist. But you can change the answers on this checklist until it is approved. So in this case, the CSAT part of the checklist is already approved. As you can see, it's already been signed off and dated. And now let's see how we can approve the CSAP checklist. Now, if I change the answers to no and save, the SPO approval cannot happen. So they have to be answered a yes for the threshold conditions checklist. Save the answers. And now the SPO approve button for the prevention checklist is now available here. You can initial it, enter any terms and conditions if you want to. Any standard terms and conditions come from the other page. And then at this time, you can approve the checklist. And you'll notice that the CSAP approval now appears right here. And this was also done right before. So this also appears as sign our team lead, that the one that I had signed off on before for the sign out threshold conditions checklist. Now the next step is TL approval. Again, the TL can approve it by putting their initials. And now this is signed off, and now all it needs is the program director and grants management approval. So first it's going to be the program director approval, and then it's going to be the grants management approval. And again, you have the answers for the SINAR checklist appearing here, the terms and conditions. You save your responses through this button. You cancel out of the screen using the cancel button, and you can print the checklist using this button. All right, so before I move on to the revision requests topic, do we have any questions?
No, we don't.
All right, so as you're reviewing the application, you might want the state to make some changes to the application. So in that case, you issue revisions to the application. Now, there are two ways to issue revisions to the application or to that form. One is to access the revision requests tab on the left-hand side menu of the application. So this is the revision request tab. You click on this, and you'll notice there's going to be a screen that will show you a filter by option where you can filter any existing revisions by one of these criterias. Now, there could be forms without revisions. For example, if I click here, these are all the forms in the application that have no revisions. Or clicking on forms with revisions, it shows you that Table 10 has a revision. And then different states of the revision. And I'll show you how that is done. For example, on the state information page, you'd like the state to change something. You go on to the state information section, and this is the state information form. And you can also view the form through this button in a separate tab for quick and easy access. For example, you'd like the contact person to be changed. And so you click on Add Revision, add your description, and save your description. Now you'll see that the revision is currently saved in the system with this description, and it tells you who created this revision, at what time, at what date, and the status right now is created, which means you've just created the revision. At this time, you can delete it if you think you do not want to send it over to the state, or you can even edit it if you'd like to edit it. All right, so once your you're sure that you'd like to send this revision over to the state to make their changes, you click on Send to State button. You'll notice that the status is now sent to state. Now, this is not what you see. This button is Start Revision, but because I have admin rights, I also have the rights for a state user, which is why as a state user, I'll be able to see the Start Revision button. So if the state, so when you send the revision to the state will receive an automated email from the BGAS system stating that this is the description of the revision, and which will tell them that they need to change the contact person on this page. So the state will log into the BGAS application, access the state information page. For example, here, they will access the page and they will make their changes. And I will show you what happens behind the scenes. Now you'll see when they click on the state information section and state information page, they will be able to see that there is a revision created with this description and they have to make these changes. So they will start the revision. This is going to unlock the form for them. The form was previously locked out. They could not make any changes since they submitted the application. And now, because you are asking for a change, so now they can change because the form is unlocked. And once they've made their changes, they've saved their changes, they can click on Complete Revision. Again, this is something that they can see, you cannot see as a PO or a TL. Now, once the status of the revision is completed, now I'll go back to the screen where you started from. This is where you were handling your revisions. So once the state has completed the revision, you will receive an email knowing that the state has completed the revision that you had asked them to do. And now you go back to the Revision Request tab into the form, and you'll see that the status is completed. You can view the form, make sure that the changes that are made by the state are accurate. And at this time, from this screen, you can approve the revision if you think that the changes made by the state are accurate, or you can disapprove the revision. Let's see what happens if you disapprove the revision. Disapprove will ask you to give a reason why you're disapproving. For example, you can say, change the zip code or something. And click OK. Now you'll see that the status is changed to Send to State post disapproval, and the reason for disapproval is also listed here, which means it's back to the state. Again, this form is unlocked for the state. They can make their changes. Again, you cannot see the button, but the states can. They will start the revision. They will make the changes to the form and complete the revision. And you will receive an email by BGAS system saying that the form is now ready for your review, or the revision is completed by the state. And at this time, you review the form, you make sure everything is okay, and at this time, you can approve the revision. So now once you click on Approve Revision, the status of the revision is now approved. So we went through different statuses of the revision, and that's how you can filter these forms by. So you can filter these forms by revisions that are in the created state, or in the sent to state stage, or in the progress and completed, approved. For example, if I do approved, this is the one that we just approved. I'm not sure if there are any disapproved, or let's see if there are any sent to state. There are none with sent to state. And there are There's one in progress or in process, which is open for revision. So you can filter your forms based on these statuses or various stages of the revision request process. Now, another way to open a revision is by doing it directly from the form. For example, you're reviewing the state information form. And you'd like the state to change something. So there is the button request revision on each form, at the top of each form. So you can click on this and you can say anything you want the state to change and click save. And in the exact same way, you will have the revision created and it's on top of the page now. You can edit or delete at this point or send it to the state. Now the status is sent to state, and the state can now start the revision, make the changes, they can complete the revision, and after the state completes the revision and makes the changes to the form, it comes back to you to approve or disapprove the revision, and the status at this time is completed. So the exact same process can also happen at the form level. Now, when you're reviewing the checklist, for example, you are reviewing the treatment checklist, and you have the annual report opened up. For example, you're reviewing the checklist and you are looking for answers to these questions, and you have table 1 opened up in a separate tab, and now you see something is not right and you request a revision, and then you can just, you're just going through the entire revision request process. And you might have multiple tabs opened up as you go along reviewing your checklist. For example, now you're on to table 2A and multiple other links that you opened up in separate tabs. So what happens is that when any of these tabs, if the session on any of these tabs expire, it can expire your main session. So if you're typing here something, your session may expire and you may lose any unsaved information. So just to make a note, make sure when you have multiple tabs opened up on your browser, keep closing it out, because you don't want these tabs to expire due to inactivity, which can also expire the session on your main screen, and you can potentially lose your unsaved information. And this has happened a lot of times to a lot of users. So just be mindful of this, that you keep closing out the tabs, the multiple tabs that you open up while you're reviewing the application. All right, so that was the revision request part. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we do have a question, Charlene.
Okay.
Can you show us the print all revisions and let us know what appears under this tab?
Print all revisions. All right, let me go back to the revision. So this is going to show you the same screen. It's going to print the same screen. It's going to show all the revisions, no matter what the status of that revision is. At this time, we have one that is completed and the other one is also completed. But if they were in any other state, you will also see those, and I can quickly show you one. I'm going to save it and I'm going to send to state for it to have a status sent to state. And now if I print all revisions. All right, now I click on print all revisions. You'll notice that the status for sent to state, the revision that had status sent to state also appears. So all the revisions on that application, form by form, section by section, will appear when you print this page. Okay, so the last section that I have to cover is the documentation log. Side note on the documentation log is that we are right now, as we speak, we are making major enhancements to this feature, and we expect it to be released soon. But I'm going to show you how you can use this feature as it exists today on BGAS. But just so you know, it's going to have a major enhancement done on this feature. And once we have that ready for you, we're going to set up a training session for you all to understand the special features and the new features on this module. But as of now, I will show you how you can use the documentation log on WebBGAS. So as Mary had, I think, pointed out earlier, you have the option to locate the documentation log within each application on the left-hand side menu. So this is the documentation log. And this is basically for SAMHSA personnel, POs, and TLs to add notes into the system as a record. So for example, you'd like to add a note into the system for the state of Maine for this year and for this application. And again, you can change the state as you please, change the year as you please, and the application. For example, we're doing Maine 2022 SABG plan, and I'd like to record a note or enter a note for a site visit that relates to this application for this year. I can choose the type of activity as site visit, and then these are the optional fields. So if you'd like, you can say that it related to this table and the contact person. This is again the test environment, so you see some of the test data, but this relates to all the users for this application, state users and everybody else that relates to this application. So again, this is an optional field. If you want to leave it empty, you can leave it empty. And project officer that relates to this application, so anybody you'd like to select here, or you can leave it empty. And there could be a date when the site visit happened, so any date that relates or associates with this note. So let's say April 12th, and then I type my note, and I can use Save Note button to save my note in the system. Now you'll see that the note that we just entered has been saved into the system, and it shows you that these were the parameters that were selected. And at this time, you can even attach a file to this note. So for example, I can attach a file, upload, close out, and now the file is also attached with this note. So this is how you can enter notes into the system. And there are various types of activities that you can choose from: review note, phone call, written communication, and so on. And there's also the option for other if you do not want to enter a note from any of these activities. And of course, search note will help you search for your notes. You can also search for notes that are system generated. For example, if you'd like to search for notes or search for all the activity that happened on this application, be it submission or any changes or revisions and everything, then you can deselect or select any of the options that you'd like. I'm going to keep site visit to search for the node that we just entered. And I'm going to keep status log for all the activity that happened to this application and click save. Do not forget to click save at the end of this box. And again, all the parameters that you used to add the node can also be used to search a node. For example, the date that we entered to associate the node with, you can enter it here to filter your search criteria. And you can also filter the nodes based on when they were created, from which date to which date. So I'm going to click on search. So you'll notice that the node that we just added is on the top of the list. This is because we chose site visit activity. So here's our node that we added. These are all the nodes that are system generated, the revisions that we created and everything, the application workflow changed to approved, and whatever happened to this application, all of this also can be searched via this documentation log feature. And if there is a case where you'd like to enter a note which does not pertain to any application, so you can also choose general note under the application type. So general note will basically say you're talking about this date and this year, and then you choose general note, so you don't have to choose any table or any contact person because it doesn't really relate to any of this. So there's also a way you can add a general note if your note does not relate to any application on the system. Another way to access the documentation log feature is to access it from the application dashboard. So we had just entered into the documentation log feature through the application that we opened. But if you're on the application dashboard, you also have the option to get into the documentation log feature from the left-hand side menu on the main screen. So you'll get this little pop-up which will help you choose the state, the fiscal year, and the application. And click go. And this will let you into the application you just chose. And now you can add notes on this application or search notes on this application or any other application for that matter. All right, so that's all I had. Crystal, do we have any questions?
No, we do not.
All right, Mary, do you want the screen back? Mary, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
I want to thank you all for attending. I and Charlene have covered a lot of information today. So just wanted to point out, don't forget the navigation manual. We have that broken out for each of the applications, step by step on how to enter the data and how to navigate. But if you still have questions, you can always contact our help desk. Derek and Abby are our help desk team, and they know the system inside and out. They'll be more than happy to help you. And if you need to, their phone number is on the login screen to contact us now, and it's an 888 number. You can give them a call, or you can also just send them a quick email, and they'll respond quickly. They are very good. But also, if you can't get a hold of them, you're more than welcome to reach out to I or Charlene. We'll be happy to help you. I know, like I said, we covered a lot, and there's more than one way to navigate in the BGAS system. We don't want to say you have to do it our way. You'll get into the system, you'll start working with it, you'll become comfortable with it. So, and once again, I want to hope you have a great rest of the day. And once again, thank you again for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, wait.
Mary,
I'm sorry. Yes. Questions?
we have one question that came in.
Okay.
What is the approximation for the visions to be completed? Oh, yeah, I believe it's the visions to be completed.
What is
Not sure.
how long it takes for a revision? That's up to you. That will be up to you and the state. You may have to go in. That's why we were. Go ahead, Charlene.
It says, what is the approximation for the videos?
Oh, what is the approximation for the videos? Okay. I apologize for misunderstanding. We will be sending them off to our team to do the captioning, and so it may be 2 to 3 weeks. However, we have conducted other SPO trainings, and we sent those links. I believe the core and the A core have them. If not, your team lead, so you can always reach out to them and ask them for the link for one of the other SPO webinars that we've conducted, and we have uploaded to the SAMHSA YouTube site. So you can contact them, or you can give me a contact if you need to, and I can send you the link. So the basic navigation is the same for all of the SPOs, BU, MH, SA, PATH, PAMI. The navigation is basically the same. So you can always refer to one of those videos, and we will let you know when these videos have been posted. Anything else? All right.
That is everything. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Crystal. Once again, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.